Hi, I'm going to be tasting the 2018 vintage of the Tabali Talinay Pinot Noir PAI from Limari in Chile. Limari is one of the northernmost wine growing regions in Chile. It's about 200 miles north of the Chilean capital of Santiago. Sort of to put it in context, Chile is almost like an upside down California. The equivalent hemisphere in the northern hemisphere would be Egypt, Iraq, and northern Mexico. This particular region is close to the coast, but has a little gap in the mountainous range that pulls in cooling fog into what is otherwise a pretty hot, arid climate. But it cools it down, allowing the mornings to have a slow ripening, letting the grapes keep their fresh acidity until the sun rises over the Andes Mountains, dries out the region, and brings back that warmth that it's known for. It's mostly limestone soils here, and the predominant varieties are Chardonnay, Syrah, and of course, Pinot Noir. I've had the pleasure of tasting many of the Chardonnays from this property as well, and I can tell you that I think personally this is one of the most outstanding wineries in the region. It also happens to be one of the first. Established in 1993, it is a family-owned winery. So this wine is 100% Pinot Noir, aged for 12 months in French oak, and has 40% whole cluster. And if you're not familiar with whole cluster as part of the fermentation process, it can be used as sort of a different way to add flavor and texture to wine. It's most often done with Pinot Noir, but you also can see some whole cluster in things like Syrah, sometimes Gamay. Even in Italy, sometimes you'll see some whole cluster in regions like Piemonte. What it really means is instead of destemming the berries from the stems before putting them in the tank or the barrel or wherever they're going to ferment, some, or all of them in some cases, are actually left intact on the clusters. And what this does is provide a little bit of sort of interest on the nose and on the palate. It also can help the juice kind of drain during the fermentation and keep these kind of open channels. But the way that you might notice it in the glass is it can add a bit of a lifted, perfumed character to it. Sometimes a little almost herbaceousness to it. And if it's done too much or the stems aren't completely ripe, it can add a little bit of a green stemmy note. But most quality producers are very conscious that their stems are also ripe in addition to the grapes, so that you just get the best outcome from using this technique. So let's taste it together. You can see it's pretty pale. If I had a newspaper underneath my glass, I would be able to read the whole article. Kind of a pale ruby. On the nose, there's a nice mix of fruit and savory. I get kind of this Morello cherry. There's a lot of rose petals on the nose, but there is something kind of earthy as well, almost like a mushroomy note. And from that whole cluster, I do get a bit of this kind of herbal note, but it's kind of in the background. It's definitely not taking over the wine. It's just adding this little piece that wouldn't otherwise be there. Acid is very fresh. I think it showcases the region in that there's ripeness, but there's acidity at the same time. It's got a beautiful kind of silken texture, medium minus in body. You might even say light. Tannins are low and are very soft and pliable. And the overall sort of completeness of the wine, I think, is present on the palate. I'm getting the things I picked up on the nose, a little of that cherry, little strawberry, raspberry here on the finish. And again, that mix of some savory notes as well as the fruit.